Okay, so you gotta push accept. Okay. Anyway, so ladies, all right, how we feeling? Feeling good? All right. So, we're coming in different places. Cassidy, you've had a chance to work now for about 2 weeks, right? And you kind of done about 10 appointments or so, and you've kind of seen some no sales, some sales. Other ladies, Alexis, my A team, right? The A's, there you go, the A team. You guys have been working for all of 4 days, or this may be your fifth day now. Maybe it's four. I don't, yeah, it's four. This is day four actually for you. And you've all had your first sales now, so that's exciting. Alexis, you actually got your first promotion, which is pretty fired up. And Alexis, this weekend you were at least you were the inspiration for Jaden to get her first sale, and I think also after I talked to Jaden, I talked to Autumn, and then it kind of transpired. So you guys are all pretty similar and kind of close in terms of distance, in terms of experience, and so on and so forth. So today, the purpose of advanced training is to take what you've learned or experienced and kind of clean it up a little bit, and then teach you some other things that's going to help with that as well. And then the very most basic thing we're going to teach you is how to do the new base pay forms, so you don't have to email stuff anymore and have things not saved. And I'm fired up about that, because that sucked for me the entire time. I've had to do that too. Because once you send it to me, I have to email it and then make sure that they receive it. And then, yeah. So anyway, let's do that right away. What do you think? Let's do that. Okay, cool. So here's what this is going to look like. You're going to go to here, and then you're going to go to, we'll come back to that in a second. Go Vector Connect. My browser's been really funky lately, so that's a whole different conversation. But when you come here, what you're going to do is you're going to go to, really simple. You're going to go to My Account, and you're going to go to Demos. Super simple. And then what you're going to do is you're going to add demos. So this is basically the form you had before, only it's on Vector Connect. And so you would just fill it out. So if it was virtual, right, when the demo was, if it was today, like Alexis, you have one at 7 o'clock. So you change it to 7 o'clock, boom, pow. If you guys can hear that in the background, that's my dog. She doesn't like her in bed, so she's nesting and moving it all around. Okay, if you hear that, just in case you do. Anyway, you go to 8 o'clock, right? And say it gets done at 8:15, great. And then you say, Cucka owner, no, put the information in. We'll just look at that, boop, 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 right? Do, and then number of referrals, same as before. Does that make sense? So really streamlined. This should be really efficient how to do that. Any questions on that? Do you guys want to try that right now? Go ahead.
You want us to just like go in, or do you want us to actually fill it out?
What I'm gonna have you do is just go in right now. So we won't take 15 minutes for you to fill out your base pay forms, but go ahead and just go to My Account. Just make sure you know where it is. So later you're not like, Chris, where was that again? So go ahead and check that out real quick. And you will fill these out. You'll fill these out starting today, right? You can also retro. So if you had a base pay forms, which I think a couple of you did, have forms from the last couple of days. If you didn't fill something out, you're going to fill this out for that. And then also last thing, I have to hit approve. And so this is where I'm going to need you guys to, from now on, if you're in an appointment and you don't make a sale, I need you to actually check out from the appointment. So that means you're going to call me, right? Something going down. Otherwise, I'm just kind of like, I don't know what's happening, right? So help me help you. Cool. Okay, cool. Other things. If you are okay with it, Cassidy, would you mind if I show the ladies how to look at a commission statement? Can I show them yours?
Go for it.
Nuts. Okay, cool. So same thing, ladies. I'm not going to show you my commission statement because it's a little bit different, but you'd go to commission statements and that's how you'd see it. You'll have access to that as of Thursday. But what we'll do is I'll show you guys how I would do it for a rep, right? So I can whatever name's easier for me to spell typically where I go. Okay, cool. So I go to Cassidy, and then what you want to see is, so you can see like what she earned each week, but if you click on it, it actually opens up another page where it's detailed in terms of what she earned by what she sold in the base pay forms and so on and so forth. So if you guys just go, Chris, I didn't get paid what I was supposed to get paid, I'm not going to know what that means. So what you want to do is look at your commission statement, check your orders, check your base pays, and then make sure you got what you're supposed to get. You can also, by the way, so you can see like where she sold for the week, what she's at for her career, what she's sold for the week prior or the week going into it based on what she's already done. You can also set up with, there's the dog, perfect. You can also set up with holdings so that, I think you just gotta, man, okay. I want to yell, but that's not going to be any good. You can set it up where dog. Okay, there you go. Okay, questions with that? Okay, cool. After you make your first, the dog's gonna get blocked out. Luna, get over here. Come here. Hey, hey, get in here. Come here, Luna. All right. She's good now. She's chilling back in her bed. Yeah, you're so tough. You're so tough. Oh yeah. No, can't play with you right now. Okay. All right. So let's get into this here. In terms of this. Okay. So this weekend was kind of fun talking to some of you ladies again. And I'll show you what I mean by that. And so for me, some things kind of just simplified in terms of like how to help you ladies have success with this. And so I hope that is exciting for you. But we're gonna walk through this right now. So of course, when I do this, it doesn't do that. There we go. Okay, cool. So do you guys have something to take notes with? Hopefully you do. You should write some stuff down. Okay, cool. This is what I believe. And this is what is, there's been a lot of people that have said this, and this wasn't something I came up with. This is just something I've learned over time from doing other things outside of Vector and Cutco. Is that 80% of your success at anything is psychology. It means it's how you're thinking about things and how you feel towards things that's ultimately going to determine if you're successful or not. So 20% is mechanics, meaning in most things in life, it's not, it's like what you're doing is like the smallest part of like everything else. Right. So Cassidy, if you're thinking about volleyball, if you don't think you can dig a ball, you probably won't dig a ball. Pretty simple. Like you're like, oh, this hitter's too good, I can't dig them. Well, you probably won't. Right now, eventually, if you're like, well, I just don't know what I'm talking about yet, or I don't know how to play the game, but I can learn it. That's better psychology that allows you to eventually learn the game. I don't know if that's the best analogy, but hopefully that makes somewhat of sense. Right. And so what's great is that 80% of anything you do is psychology. That fires me up because then it means it's on me to be successful. And if you're a person that's talented, or you believe you're talented, right? That's also psychology. You want that, I think, because then you can control what happens versus like it being out of your hands to control. Right. I'm going to give you guys a bunch of like just things to think about because it's kind of how I work and so on and so forth. But this is one of my favorite things to say or think about is that nothing has meaning other than the meaning you choose to give it. And because we just said 80% of success is psychology, I'm going to say some things that hopefully like resonate with you. Some of them might, some of them won't, and that's okay. But nothing has meaning other than the meaning you choose to give it to. And that's one of the, I've been working on a list of 10 things I really believe, like truths that I've experienced in life. And if you look at my list right here, it probably won't show it right away, but the very first one is nothing has meaning other than the meaning you choose to give it. Which I think is the most empowering thing I've ever heard, because what that means essentially is if nothing is bad, nothing is good, it's what the meaning you give it. So something can happen to you and you can choose to interpret it a couple different ways, actually probably thousands of different ways, but ultimately you can control what anything happens, whatever happens to you means. So regardless if you had a great couple, Cassie example, if you had a great couple weeks, if you had marginal or average, it doesn't mean anything other than the meaning you choose to give it, right? So the same thing can happen to multiple people, but multiple people can take different meanings from it because of their ability to make meaning from different things that happen. And I think if you know that, that's a very powerful psychology, right? And so I hope you guys capture that, right? And you'll hear me say that a lot. If the longer you work with me, you'll hear me say this. You'll hear me repeat this. You'll probably need me to repeat it like 15 times before you start to go, I just think nothing has meaning other than the meaning you choose to give it. And be like, oh, she said it. She's starting to believe it. This is great, right? And I love it. Okay. So, all progress comes from breaking patterns. So if we have a way of doing something and we consistently get the same results, the only way you're going to get a different result is if you break what you've always done. And so sometimes you have good habits, and sometimes you have good patterns and good habits, and sometimes you have not as good patterns or not as good habits, and the results aren't what you want to be. So really simply, in order to get a different result, you have to break your habits or patterns that you've been doing in order to do that. Now, again, this sounds very like philosophical right now, and I know, but I promise this does start to make more sense, right? So we got to change things up a little bit if we want a different result. If you want to keep your result, by the way, if you love the result you're getting, keep doing it. If you don't love it, change it. Okay. So this one, I don't feel like you guys need to hear necessarily, but it's built into my PowerPoint based on your results and based on our conversations thus far. But I think this is something good to know, is that sometimes people have the ability to only fixate on what's wrong when what's right is also available to fixate on, but we choose to typically fixate on that because humans are kind of hardwired to find the thing that could hurt us, right? And at one point in our evolutionary period of existence, we actually had real threats. Like we actually had like saber-toothed tigers hunting us down. So if the bush moved, we had to be like, holy shit, what is that? And that like kept us alive. And now when someone talks shit about us on social media or says something, we're like, we're still wired to think that's like a saber-toothed tiger. We're like, hey, we have this defense mechanism when really it doesn't matter at all. But we don't know that because we're still hardwired to find problems, right? So as we evolve as humans, we have to kind of figure out what we want to focus on. And what's great is really there are no threats. They're almost all existential versus actual threats in life. And so I know, sorry, I'm going really deep, Alexis. I told you I'm bringing it today. Okay. So I want you to know that. So here was something I said to, I know 2 of you this weekend. In fact, I said to all 3 of you this weekend, because at one point you all needed to hear it. The conversation came up about like, Alexis, you were one of the first people I talked to in terms of the 3. I think you were the first person I talked to because you had demos out the gate. And Cassie, if we had this conversation, it was brief, right? And that would have been 2 weeks ago, so that's probably why I don't remember it as well. But essentially, Alexis, you said something like, I feel bad for selling something. I think you said some version of that, right? You're like, I feel bad. Okay. And I'm like, you shouldn't feel, you said, I felt like I was pushy. And I'm like, look, Alexis, there's nothing I witnessed you in training or anything so far that makes me think you are high pressure or pushy. That's just not possible because you don't have that, like that. I mean, by the way, you probably do have it in you. And I bet if you wanted something bad enough, you'd make it happen and you might become a high pressure, pushy person. But I don't think you wanted Cutco sales that badly that you became a high pressure, pushy person in those presentations, right? And I think you needed me to say that to you in order for you to be like, oh, I guess I'm not. And can I do that? And by the way, your conversation also prepared me for the conversation I had with Jaden, which also prepared me for the conversation I had with Autumn. So thank you, by the way, because it was basically the same conversation I had 3 times in a row with all 3 of you. Now, but by the time I got to Autumn, I'm like, I know what I'm about to do because I've been doing it already this weekend. And here's what's going to happen. Go figure. First sale after each of these conversations. Cassidy, I think you made a sale your first appointment. It wasn't as big of a sale, but then you started kind of doing the same thing. So your path in Alexis is relatively simple. But this, by the way, what I'm going to talk about, I learned reading a book. I think it was called. It's called Hooked. And this concept I talked about was a book called Hooked because I built an app a couple of years ago, and it talks about how to make something like addictive and like sticky. Does that make sense? And so in terms of Cutco, here's what again, if you remember this from training, I think this is still relevant and it'll be relevant for a long time. I always think the 2 questions I always asked myself that made the job easier, and I didn't feel bad about selling Cutco, especially to people that I knew because I knew I was going to see them again. I would ask myself, do I think people are better off with Cutco or are people better off without Cutco? And the answer for me was always, I think they're better off with Cutco. So I didn't have a problem selling Cutco to somebody, and then I said, do I think they're better off with more or less Cutco? If someone would have bought an Ultimate, I didn't sell any Ultimates my first summer. So I guess I didn't have a chance to feel bad about that. There was no signature, so I couldn't have sold that back in the day, but I did sell a couple of homemakers. I definitely didn't feel bad about that. I was like, cool. Okay. I wish I could have sold them more, but I felt pretty good about that because the one thing I knew about Cutco, the one thing I like, again, as long as it was true that it's guaranteed forever, I was like, well, they're not gonna have to worry about knives ever again. So that's kind of cool. And what's even cooler is 20 years later, the people that bought Cutco from me, they still have it and they don't have to worry about it. And so whatever money they spent back in the day, do you think they'd still have that money if they wouldn't have spent it on Cutco? No, they would have spent it on something else. They would have been like, it would have been consumed 19 years ago, if not longer. Like it might have been consumed the next day. You know what I mean? So I really didn't feel bad about selling Cutco because even my friends that were broke college kids, they were like, you're stupid. This job sounds terrible. I'd watch them go out to the bars and spend $50 on shots. Right. And I'd be like, you could have bought a trimmer. Right. And back in the day, a trimmer was like $50, right? Because whatever, but they would still have that trimmer. That $50 would have been better spent on a trimmer than they would have been on shots because no one remembered the shots anyway the next day. And how do you discern 7 shots? You know what I mean? So like, I was like, what? I didn't get it. Right. And so I was like, you'd be better off with Cutco. I'm not saying get everything, but like, dude, you just blew $50. You could have spent it on anything. Cutco would have been a better thing. And I actually believe that, right? Like, hopefully you can follow the logic on that. It's like, well, what did you spend it on? You spend it on something dumb that's consumed. This is going to be around forever, right? And so here's the concept I want to introduce to you. It's called the manipulation matrix. And essentially, think of an XY axis, right? And on one axis, it's do you believe the product you sell makes people's lives better or you don't, right? It's pretty like this or that. And then on the y-axis, or again, I haven't been in school for a while, so I'm not sure which one's X and one's Y, but you guys can read this, right? X, Y. Doesn't use the product or uses the product. So there's essentially 4 categories you can fall into. Does that make sense? There's 4 subcategories or 4 titles you can have. One is called, we'll see how long my dog starts whining here in a second, but there's the broker, the dealer, the pusher, and the promoter. Okay. So let me explain what all 4 of them mean so you can kind of understand that. Ideally, where you want to get to with any product, if you're going to work with a product, whether it's if you're going to be a psychiatrist later, right, Autumn, you want to believe that what you're doing makes people's lives better and that you use the product in some form. If like, oh, no, I would never do that. It's like, well, hold on, we need you want to use your product, right? So we'll kind of walk through this here. So here's what a broker looks like. I'm going to open the door so the dog doesn't have start barking and, just being a drama queen. Okay, if you go, you got to be good. Okay. Go. Okay. At some point, I have a feeling she's going to whine to get back in here, but that's okay. So this is what a broker looks like. A broker is this, right? I'll explain my definition of how I see a broker is you use the product. Does that make sense? And so right now for you guys, if your family or people don't own Cutco, it's hard for you to use the product. But guess what? That's why in-person training, there are some benefits of in-person training versus virtual training. One of the benefits is in-person training, we actually have you cut stuff. So you get a chance to use the product, go, oh, this does cut tomatoes pretty good. Nice. Okay. I did that, by the way, in training. I wasn't like, oh, Cutco's great. It wasn't until my parents bought Cutco that I started using the table knives. And I remember being like, this cuts chicken. Like this actually cuts chicken. Right. And then I was like, dude, you should get them to cut chicken. And they're like, oh, I get it. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. They cut chicken. Right. And the way I would say it, I had so much more conviction because I was using it. Right. So after your fast starts, we're going to get you some product. Does that make sense? So your conviction will go up even higher. Right. So the second thing in terms of being a broker is believe products can materially improve people. Like this is just like you believe that if people buy Cutco, that their life will be better for it. Really simple. That means you have a high conviction. Again, you believe what you're doing is in alignment with, again, being like a good person. You're not doing something to somebody, you're doing something for somebody. The intention is to really help, right? And because of that, you'll actually be able to handle objections. Meaning like if someone says, you know what, Chris, and Autumn, you said this to me. You're like, Chris, that's really good. I'm like, Autumn, it literally says the same thing on the piece of paper. You're just not saying it because you don't have the belief that you're actually doing something for somebody versus to somebody. So you can handle an objection. If someone says that's way too many knives, I'm like, I totally, it's a lot of knives. I totally get that. When I was brand new, I thought that was way too many knives, but then I started using it more and more. And then I saw what you use them for each and every piece. It's just like a golf set or a set of golf clubs that, you're not going to use your 3 iron all the time, but when you get in that situation, you want to use it. You definitely want to have it. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. If you don't think you'd ever use the 3 iron or the butcher knife in this example, we can take it out and show you something a little bit smaller. Would you prefer that? You're not going to be pushy. You can handle that objection, right? It's too much money. Totally get it. When I first heard about Cutco was 14.19, I couldn't believe people spent that out. But that's before I knew anything about cutlery. The crazy thing is the stuff that's sold in stores, the German stuff that's not even guaranteed forever is almost twice as much. And it's not even guaranteed for half as much. It's not even guaranteed for a year. So that's what's so cool about Cutco is if someone decides to get it, that's literally the last time they ever have to spend money on knives ever again. Doesn't that sound like something kind of cool? Yeah, I guess so. You guys get that? Like, I have no problem. Like, and this is just stuff that you kind of get good at after a while. You can handle the objections. I'm gonna say something because it feels natural right now to say this, and so this is something I heard a long time ago that makes a lot of sense. And it is when rapport is established. So meaning there's a connection between you and the person you're speaking to. When rapport is established, when there's commonality established between you and that person, whoever is more certain will influence the other person. Whoever is more certain will influence that person. So what does that mean? That means there's been times where most of your life, your parents have probably influenced you, right? They've told you what's going to happen because they're more certain, but I bet there's been times in your life that you were actually more certain about a particular thing and your parents gave into you. For me, it was going on spring break. Since I was like 16, I went on spring break, 16, 17, 18, sophomore, junior, and senior. Somehow I went to Florida with my friends. I don't know how I pulled it off. I just kept trying different angles until I got it. And eventually I was like, my senior, they're like, you're not going. I'm like, hell no, I'm not going. I've gone the last 2 years. You're gonna tell me I can't go now? Not a chance. I am going. I'll see you later. I tried like 7 different approaches, but I went to spring break. Probably shouldn't have gone that year because I actually got in trouble, but every other year, it's all good. So anyway, but do you guys get it? Like, I learned how to handle that objections and I had certainty that I was going to spring break. And so how I look at it, and this is how I think a healthy way to look at it is you're brokering a relationship, meaning if you didn't exist, this person, like imagine this. Have you guys ever played matchmaker before? You've never like connected a friend with another friend, whether it's like romantically or just from the way they hang out. Like maybe in college, like you have friends from high school and friends from college and they meet up and they're like, oh, this person's so cool. Or a guy and a girl, they start dating. That's what brokering really is. Without you, this person looking and this person looking wouldn't have found each other, right? So I think of it the same way. Like Cutco is this product that I think is a pretty badass product, and this person I think would actually benefit from like owning Cutco, but they don't know about it. So I talk to them about it and say, you should check this out. And what happens? They go, you're right. This is badass. I brokered that relationship. Does that make sense? Like someone trying to find a house. That's why they're called real estate brokers typically. Hopefully that makes sense. You have the highest chance of being successful when you're actually a broker versus anything else. And I hope that makes sense, like cognitively, like that makes sense, right? So then you have a dealer. Here's how a dealer feels. A dealer believes their product is good, but it's not necessarily for everybody. Does that make sense? So like, well, but these guys are the exception. And oftentimes more people are the exception than the rule. By the way, that doesn't make any sense because the exception means it's the exception, the minority versus the majority, right? Typically, dealers don't have personal stories because they're not using the product. Because they don't use the product, it's hard for people to kind of vision themselves using the product. They lack conviction because, again, they haven't used the product or don't own the product. So it's hard to do that. And oftentimes they'll agree with the objections. Why do they agree with the objections? Because the first two things, they don't have personal stories and they don't use the product. And so they'll actually agree with it. So for example, if someone's like, that's a lot of money, you're like, it is, isn't it? You can't, that doesn't work, right? That's like, I want you to hear this, right? And then you have a promoter, right? A promoter is a person that you can sell because of your personality. You have a good personality, so people like to be around you. Same thing, you believe that the product is good, but it's not necessarily for everybody. And you don't try to handle objections. You can be successful initially, but you're going to quit when it gets hard. I've seen people like have success initially, but then like when people like there's resistance, they just go, oh, it's hard. I give up. By the way, quitting is a habit. So when people quit things, that is a habit that you've probably have quit other things that when you experience like some kind of barrier, that's a habit, right? And so when people quit, I'm just like, I mean, it's not really on me. It's like, well, that's just what you do. If you'd like to like experience not quitting, I can try to work with you. You're again, I have a belief that I'm probably a better coach than most people or most managers you've ever worked with in terms of wanting to help you get better. So I'm here to help you, but if you're not here, I can't really help you, right? So just throwing that out there. And then the last thing is you could be a pusher. You really only do the job for personal gain. This is what gives salespeople typically a bad name. It also gives companies a bad name because you're pushing a product. You're not really believing it. You're just kind of pushing a product to make money and that's it. I also think typically you're lacking morality and you'll cut corners to get a result, right? This is where if you're like exaggerating or lying about stuff and you're saying things that simply aren't true, right? So here's the reality. You're one of those four things, right? And anytime we're on this spectrum, you're either a pusher, a promoter, a broker, or a dealer, right? What I'd like you to do right now, if you want to throw it in the chat, you can, or you can text me, but where do you feel like you are right now? Are you a broker? Are you a dealer? Are you a pusher? Are you a promoter? Not a bad thing, Cassidy. I had a feeling it was something. She's like, you know what? I have had enough of this, Chris. Bye. Okay.
No, she said she was going to call me. And then, of course, it's right now. So I just
Yeah.
had to jump out.
That's okay. So, all right, you guys, let's see some text here. Okay. So, okay, cool. Alexis, that's kind of where I would think you'd be right now. I think a dealer is kind of, for most people, unless your family owns Cutco, is typically where people will start off. Because how can you really be anything else if you don't use the product? So Autumn, I don't know if you have the product or not. If you don't have the product, it's hard to be anything but basically either a dealer or a pusher when you're starting off. And so I just want you guys to know that you kind of understand those terms. You're not a pusher. You can't be pushy because you're not doing something because you're trying to do it for self-benefit. You're doing it because they literally, if they decide that they see the value, they're going to have Cutco for the rest of their lives. So you're actually doing them a favor. They just don't know it yet. Does that make sense? Okay. So we want to get you guys to a broker, right? Like ideally that's where you're going to be. If you're going to be around long-term, anyone that's here for a long period of time is going to be a broker, right? So a couple things, right? We got to get you some product, but we got to get you some more confidence here too. So a couple things here. Sometimes this is again, another thing that I hear. And so I want to say this. Sometimes people say, I'm going to try. Don't try, just get it done. Just get it done. Like basically when someone says, I'll try, that basically tells me they're not going to do it, right? Trying means I don't have much certainty, so I'm not going to take much action, which means you're less likely to be successful. Does that make sense? Right? It's like, I'm going to figure it out. If someone says, I don't know, Chris, but I'll figure it out, that sounds like confidence in self and confidence that they figured things out in the past and they'll make it happen. When someone typically tells me they're going to try, I'm going to try to make it. I'm going to try to do blah. That basically is already an excuse that says, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear, but really what I'm already telling you is no. I'm just too scared to actually tell you no. So I'm going to tell you I'm going to try instead. Have we all done that before? Probably. I've done that too. And almost to some degree, doesn't that lack integrity? Because you're really not going to try. You're just going to like, you're really not doing what you say you're going to do, but that's okay. Right. So here's another concept that, again, this might resonate, this might not, but I'll kind of go through this quickly. Wherever you are, right? We're typically in a place before we learn about something in an undesired state. And we love people, products, and places that can induce us into a different, okay, let me say this differently. The highest paid producers, the highest paid people in life are state inducers. What does that mean? These are people that can change the way we feel. Okay, so think of your best friends, Alexis. Why are they your best friends? Because when you're in a bad mood, what do? You don't want to be in a bad mood, so you call them or text them. And what do? They shift your state into a better state. They help you say, screw him, right? Or your mom's crazy, right? And they try to help you get back into a desired state. That's why they're your best friends, right? We talked about in training, like Lululemon, right? Sometimes people wear Lululemon because they want to feel good about themselves, because the other ones don't make them feel the same way. People buy products all the time that can make them have the desired outcome, right? So for example, sometimes we don't know that a product will make the changes we want in ourselves without knowing. Like, we need someone to tell us these things, right? So do you think most people like have any aspirations for anything in the kitchen? Probably not. But could we create one for them? Sure. By the way, you could do it by just simply saying stuff like, hey, Alexis, do you like cooking? By the way, Alexis actually says she does like cooking. Everyone else typically says no. And so I'd say, cool. So they're in this undesired state. They don't like cooking. I might say, well, would you like to like cooking? Cool. Well, let me show you a product that might actually make you enjoy your time in the kitchen a little bit differently, right? And that could be the product, right? Or, hey, Alexis, do you like doing dishes by hand? What if I could sell you a product that you'll never have to do, like wash your knives by hand ever again? Would you be willing to like consider buying a product that might do that for you? Yeah. What if, again, you're just starting off? How many times have you bought knives? I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Okay, cool. Do you like that process? Not really. Cool. Would you be okay if you never did that again? Can I show you a product that might actually help you do that? So when you think about that, right? We buy things. The number one people buy. Let's try that again. The number one reason people buy anything, and this is crazy, right? The number one reason anyone buys anything is hope. They hope it will solve the perceived problem they have in their head. Does that make sense? So it's really simple. Our job sometimes is to identify an undesired state and show them how buying our product can create the desired state they want. Okay. I said this in training, but I'll say this again, right? What are you communicating? 7% of what you say is of the 100% communication process, 7% is the words you speak. So in reality, it's the smallest part by a lot, right? 38% is tonality and voice inflection, but this is also where your internal beliefs become external. So if you're like, yeah, you should totally get it. It's a really good product. You're going to be like, I don't know if I believe you because you don't sound like you believe yourself. And then the way you can really tell is my body. If I'm like all shriveled up and really seems like meek and meager, and I'm like, you should totally get it. It's really good. You're like, I think you're lying to me. Your face is saying the right things, but everything about your body is telling me you're full of shit. Does that make sense? Your body actually doesn't know how to lie. Does that make sense? Like, that's why if you meet somebody and you're like, there's like something about that person just didn't seem right, it's because they were probably lying and their body doesn't know how to lie, but they sounded like they were saying the right things, but they weren't aligned with what they were saying. And there's sometimes you're like, that guy sounds crazy, but something about him just feels right. I hope that's sometimes how you guys deal with me. You're like, I don't know, man. He says a lot of shit, but like, it feels right. It feels good. He seems to be a person of integrity. So I'm down with that. Okay. So what are you communicating? Right. I want you guys to hear that voice inflection matters, how you say something. There's times I don't know what I'm going to say. I just start talking and eventually I find the words, but I'm doing it with the intention that I want to help somebody. Right. I know I'm not going to be perfect, but I just go after it. Okay. So resources are never the problem. Lack of resourcefulness is the problem. I applaud you ladies, because when you didn't get the results, right? And by me communicating with some of you, you reached out to me and you're like, Chris, what do I do? That, by the way, is part of being resourceful. You get help from people that know what the hell they're doing in those scenarios. And one of the things that was crystallized for me this weekend is it's really simple. There are 3 reasons why people buy or they don't buy, right? Or if someone's not buying, it's one of 3 things every damn time. It's one of 3 things every time. It's either 1, that they're not a qualified prospect, meaning you're showing to someone you shouldn't show to because they have 0 interest in our product. That's 1. Okay. 2, you're saying weird things. You're not following the manual. You're just making stuff up and like cutting stuff out, and you're just not doing what we taught you at all. Okay. And the third one, which we spent the most time on, is your psychology is not good, meaning you don't actually believe people should buy. And so you're going through the motions. It's one of those 3 things every time. So if we get you to the point where your psychology is awesome, guess what's going to happen? You're probably going to sell Cutco more often. In fact, here's what I'll tell you. If you do the job the right way and you're showing the right prospects, okay, you're showing people that are married, people that are over 30, people that own their own house, here's what's going to happen. 20% of those people, no matter what you do, doesn't even matter what you do. You could say all the wrong things. You could, again, if we were doing appointments in person, you could cut yourself and they'd still buy Cutco because Cutco's that badass. Okay. Again, out of those 10 people, one of those 10 people, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, even if you crush it, you follow the manual, your energy is great, they're not going to buy Cutco. You know what's going to happen on the other 70%? The other 70% are going to buy or not buy based on how you show up and what you say and what you do. So what does that mean? You can take your closing ratio from 20% to 90% when you learn how to say and do the right things at the right time and feel good about what you're doing. I hope that excites you, because that excited me when I heard that. I'm like, it'd be really cool, right? Cassidy's like could potentially start to experience this pretty soon here, right? When she gets to like the higher commissions where she's at 20, 25%. She goes out and she has a couple of appointments. Let's say she has 4 or 5 for a week. She sells $1,500. $1,500 at 25% is let's just say, I think it's $500, right? Or pretty close to it. 1,500. Is that, am I over exaggerating? Yeah, a little bit. Sorry. It would be like 450, something like that, right? Would $450 be kind of game changing to make working 5 to 8 hours a week? Probably, especially where you are in life. Like, think about the quality of choices. And by the way, imagine not just doing it one time, but you start to stack it again and again and again. 450, 450, 450, 450, 450, 450, 450. Now your checking account isn't, $83. It's 450, it's 2,000, it's 3,000, it's 4,000, it's 5,000, it's 6,000. And you don't spend $450 a week. You save that money and you live like you're living right now, but you don't have to say, I can't go to Chipotle. I can get a red Solo cup if we go to a party, right? You can do all those things and you can start stacking stuff so that if you want to go on spring break, you don't have to ask your parents, can I go on spring break? And you get your own room. You don't have to like room with 6 other people and share a bed and have a lot of weird nonsense going down. Are you feeling that's what becomes cool? And then in the summer, you're like, I haven't even done this full time yet. What if I did this for 20 hours a week? Damn, right? That's where things start to get fun. So reasons come first, answers come second. What does that mean? Well, let's talk about that. Okay. One of the things that I think is a really powerful point of the presentation is where you share your whys, right? And in training this last week, I kind of talked about this a little bit, but I always like to go deeper when I have the chance, because this also makes it easier for you to do the job in a way that makes sense and that it has more meaning than doing it on the surface level. So who feels pretty good about what they've been sharing with their prospects the last either couple days, or Cassidy for the last couple weeks? Who has like kind of a thing they say like all the time, like kind of down at this point? Anyone there? Not really. Cassidy, you have the most reps, so go ahead. Do you have like kind of like when you say, hey, why are you doing the job? Tell me what you say.
Here, I have it written down, but I pretty much just say like, I have I use my experience that like I have with like the knives, and I say like they're great products. Like I like the job too because it allows me to like be flexible with my schedule and like they really work with me on that. And like, I pretty much just also say like, it's a great product. So like, I feel comfortable like representing this product too. You know
Cool.
what I mean?
I do. So here's what I want to challenge you guys a little bit. So what I'm going to have you guys do is, you guys saw in the on the sheet there, is instead of just saying like that, like what you did, and you didn't do anything wrong, but what you did is you connected with me on a cognitive level, but not on an emotional level. Does that make sense? And how people are moved is not through typically reasoning, it's through emotion. Okay. So you said this is great because it's really flexible. So what I would say, Cassidy, is why is flexible important to you? Why is like flexibility an important quality for you?
Oh, because I'm like a student athlete and stuff.
Yeah.
And
And
like
why
I'm
is
in
that?
school full time.
Yeah. And so why is it important to you? Like, why is that important to be a student athlete and you're in school full time? Like, why is that something that matters to you right now?
Because I'm really busy. Like, I don't know. I like have it written down too in like my introduction or whatever. Like I say like that type of stuff, but I see what you mean by like reconnecting that to like what you're
So I'm gonna have you be the example so that by your example they can learn this too.
Yeah.
So why do you want to be a full-time busy college student? Like why is that important to you?
so I can be successful in life.
And why do you want to be successful in life?
So I can make money and support my future family. I don't
Cool.
know.
But and that you're not wrong. That is part of it, right? And so, but
Yeah.
why is it important you to support your family later in life?
So we're not poor.
So you're not poor, right? That's probably like
Yeah.
a byproduct of that. But there's always something deeper there. But if we don't go there, people don't like think to that level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think the level that you're willing to go to is going to dictate like the level of like connection you're going to have with somebody. So, Cassidy, you can keep saying what you just said, right? You could be like, I like the job because it's flexible, and you can like list off some bullet points, and people will cognitively connect with you on that. Or you can choose to go a little bit deeper and kind of give them an emotional part where you could say like, look, I'm doing this job because, and Sue, if you don't know this, I'm actually going to school for, you insert your major because I don't remember what it is off the top of my head right now.
Yeah.
I'm also playing volleyball, which means I'm actually in practice every day or I have games. So I'm actually really busy. And what I really appreciate this is it allows me the flexibility to do all those things, but still have some income. So I actually have a life too, because eventually the reason why I'm doing this anyway is so that, 10 years from now, I have a family, I can provide for them and actually be successful, because that's always been one of my fears, is not being successful. So this might not seem like a big deal to you, Aunt Sue, but I really appreciate you meeting with me today.
Wow.
Right. And those things are all probably true with what I just said, but you just aren't articulating those things. And so again, I think oh no, it's not there, but well, it's my second rule, right? Here you go. Okay. You can see it. Let's see if my second rule is: the greatest gift you can give is your state and yourself. So what does that mean? That means if I want people to be loving, I need to demonstrate loving first. If I want people to be energetic, I have to show what energetic looks like in order to lead people to pull them up. Okay. So if I want people to be vulnerable, I have to be vulnerable first. And how vulnerable someone's willing to be it's not going to supersede my level of vulnerability. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. And hopefully that was a good example for you guys to kind of see what that looks like. So what we're going to do right now is I want you to just grab a piece of paper. And on this piece of paper, I want you to write down what you've been saying for your first 2, 3, 4, 5 appointments. And then what I want you to do is what I just did with Cassie, and just say why. And you're going to do that a couple times. You're just going to say, you don't have to say this out loud to me, right? You're just going to say it to yourself, why, and why, until you find something that feels a little bit raw. People learn best through stories and experience. And so when you become a good storyteller, people can relate to what you're saying. Does that make sense, Alexis? And so we're going to take a couple minutes right now, just go through that. Cool. Part of the reason I have you do that is, yes, you're telling your customers that, but also you're telling yourself that. Every time you say that, that ingrains at a deeper level, because there's times where you might not want to do something in the moment, right? It's like doing homework. You're like, why am I doing this homework? Well, you're not doing the homework for the sake of doing homework. You're doing it so you can get a grade, because you're doing it for the grade, to get a degree, because you want a degree, to get a job, to get jobs like that. But it's easy to sometimes lose when you put your head down. It's hard to see the road where you're going versus where you currently are. Right. And so sometimes you need that more than your customers do. And then you also feel like in alignment when you say those things, because you're like, am I doing those things? Does that help? Again, this is psychology. 80% of anything in life is success. And for success is psychology. So, but now I'm going to give you some 20% non-psychology stuff. You guys cool with that? So I might teach you a little bit now besides that. So let's go back to sharing the screen here. So, and this is what I started to say before, but I'll say this now. Sales is the trailing indicator of how good your story is. So when you do a great job of telling a story, people are going to naturally say, yes, I want to do that. So create incredible stories, but you can't do that by being boring. So I want you guys to be fully you versus like a half version of you, which maybe you were your first couple of appointments. And sometimes you hold back more during the people you know really, really well, because they know you not to be who you are, but who you've always shown up as. And that's typically not who you really are. I'm going to say that again, because that might have been confusing. My experience is this, is when you're young, who you really are is who you are with your friends and your closest friends. And that's typically more outgoing and more energetic and all these things. But when you get into like a room of family members and adults, you act the way you think you're supposed to act, which really isn't you. So what I want to try to encourage you to do is be more who you really are in front of those people too, because they're the ones that love and care about you the most. But if you're not showing who you really are, I don't know what game that is, but it's not a game that really makes any sense when you really think about it. So anyway, I'm going to get to this. So, okay, cool. I want to teach you guys some concepts that I think make a big difference. Okay. So on your paper, go ahead and write good value. I'm going to define what a good value is. Okay. So good value. Good value means this in my mind. A good value means, again, visually, right? A good value means the value exceeds the price. Simple enough. And so typically, again, your job during the presentation is to stack value. So typically, if the price is here and the value is here, what's someone going to say? They're going to say yes. But they might not say yes to a homemaker. They might say yes to like a couple pieces. So the objective is, can we not make a good value, but can we make a great value? And so how do we do that? Well, again, from a visual standpoint, the price stays the same, right? The price was a 5, and now instead of making the price a 5 compared to a value of a 10, we take the value of 15. Okay, how do we do that? We do that by doing this. We divide by 5. The hell does that mean, Chris? Okay, let me show you what I mean by that. Okay, so you probably have started to think this or ask this question. Cassidy, we had this conversation a little bit like 2 weeks ago, right? Like, I think I was in the middle of a meeting when we were having this conversation, or some version of this, right? Is essentially, how do I know what I can do with like what someone's getting, right? Because you were like, oh, I forgot to give this thing. Can I do this? I'm like, yes. Okay. So how this works is this, is you take line 1. Line 1 means what they're paying. Okay. And you divide that number by 5. With me so far? So in this example, line 1 is 100. So divide that by 5, that equals 20. So 20 is essentially what you could give them for free in terms of points. Now, this is harder to bring this in as a simple way to learn this, because we used to have price lists, and price lists had everything laid out in terms of points. So where can you find this as a resource if you wanted to? Well, if you go to, again, your orders, go to Cutco orders and go to a price list, you could do it this way, where you can literally, my browser's been just bunk lately. It's just like, it doesn't want to work. It's really fun. Okay. So anyway, you go here, you go to price list. And everything, if you guys will see this here, right? Everything has a retail price, it has a CPO value, and it has a bonus points. So right here it says price, CPO, bonus. So for example, this homemaker has a retail price of $14.93. That is a CPO value. Again, remember CPO stands for commission paid on. It's what you get credit for. And it has a bonus value of 980 points. We'll come back to that in a second. So if we were looking for something that has 20 points or less as something we could potentially offer them for free, well, none of these things would be options because these are all more expensive than 20 points. I hope that makes sense. So what do we start to see? We start to see stuff like a table knife. The table knife so far is the lowest thing we see at 27 points. 20 points is not very much because they're not spending very much to get them something for free, right? So if we keep scrolling, we might be able to find something like towards the bottom of this, which is like some, some kitchen tools or a sheath. So something I think that's not a bad way to go is, let's say someone's getting like $100 knife, which is like a cheese knife. Well, we can't really do anything for the price of a cheese knife because we can't change prices. Does that make sense? And so what I could potentially do to add some value is I could say, well, if you get this, because if I took 100, right, 100 being a cheese knife, so look, cheese knife right here is 99. Let's just call it 100. That means I could potentially give them up to 20 points. Well, there's really nothing for 20 points, right? Otherwise, I can give them a tray, a 5-piece knife and fork tray. Why would I give them a 5-piece knife and fork tray if they're getting one knife? Okay. So maybe what I do is I give them a sheath. And so I say, tell you what, if you get the cheese knife today, what I could do is I can actually throw in the sheath for free, which is normally $10. So instead of it being 109, I can get it to you for 99 plus the $10 sheath. How does that sound? There's a little bit of value. Make sense? And as they spend more, so all of these things are available to you. You can look at all this stuff, right? Or maybe we do a cutting board. Maybe they want a cutting board. Maybe they're like, oh, if you can do a cutting board, man, I'm in. All right, man, cutting board, $10. Let's do that. It's 10 points. I'm down to give you a cutting board. No worries. Here you go. Okay. But as they spend more, they can potentially get more. So let's say they're looking at $300 of stuff. Now this is closer to like option number 1 or option number 2 in terms of the custom sets, right? So it's 60 points, 60 points. Now we're starting to talk like trimmers, a cheese knife, a petite, petites, I don't know what petite, that's probably a petite carver. Okay. So you have different options. Does that make sense? And so the really simple rule is the more someone spends, the better offer we can give them, or the more stuff we can give them for free. So you don't have to give someone a pair of super shears if they don't want a pair of super shears. If they have zero interest in super shears, we'll find something they do have interest in, right? That's called a hot button. Let's say we went up to like $1,200. Well, $1,200 might be a good example of like what a homemaker might look like. So if we took 1,200 times 5 or divided by 5 or times 20%, same number, doesn't matter, equals 240. 240 points. So what could you give away for 240 points? Well, you can give away a pair of super shears, which I think you guys knew that because we offer super shears from the beginning. But how many points is a pair of scissors? Well, a pair of scissors, actually, let's look at this. Accessories. Super shears are 85 points. 85 points. And we could give up to 240 points. So what does that mean? Well, let's say I offer them a pair of super shears and they say, Chris, it's a lot of money. And I say, okay, that's fair, Autumn. Tell you what, if I could figure out a way to give you the super shears and the cheese knife, would you do it then? And you'll have people sometimes be like, man, that's pretty good. You know what? Yeah, if you can do the super shears and the cheese knife, I'll say yes. And I'll say, well, let me check. And it's a great way to do it is you go, hey, Chris, I'm with my neighbor and they're thinking about doing the homemaker. I want to know if it'd be okay if I give them the cheese knife and the super shears for free. And I used to make this face because I was in front of customers. I'd be like, and my manager would be like, yeah, you can do that. I'm like, he says yes. And they're like, all right, great. Why are they excited? Because I was excited and because I didn't just throw them stuff at them. If I would have said, if you get this homemaker today, I'll give you the super shears, the cheese knife, and the veggie peeler, how does that sound? They would probably say, I don't know, what else can you do? because I just threw it at them for no reason. Does that make sense? So you want to use points judiciously, because what you're doing is you're building value. But when you just throw stuff at people, you lessen the value of what you're actually offering them. Does that make sense? So that's why I teach you, hey, when you offer this, offer a pair of super shears or offer a cheese knife and a veggie peeler, because if you haven't figured it out, those are roughly the same point value as a pair of scissors. What if they don't like super shears? What if they already own a pair of super shears? Great. What do they want? We can look at that and figure that out. You can type it in, right? And on the Cutco Orders app, you see the thumb in the corner, right? If it's green, it means it's great. If it's orange, it means it's kind of, it's in the middle. And if it's red, it means you're too aggressive. Does that make sense? Okay.
Sorry, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is this like something you would use if they're having trouble like actually committing on something? Or is
Totally.
this just like if they were like, if they spent this, you be like, oh, well, you can also get the cheese knife for free.
Yeah.
Is
So
it kind of just like only really use it like if they're having trouble committing?
yeah, I'd make it easier for them to say yes. If I haven't got like, Cassidy, if you crush the job, like there's been times where I'll do an appointment and I'm like, did you want to get the homemaker? They're like, and before I say anything about free stuff, they're like, yep. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Now, by the way, I did this with my aunt because I learned about a special and it was relatively new. She'd already said yes to a homemaker. And I was like, hold on, I haven't even told you about the specials yet. And I like gave her way more stuff. And she's like, oh, sure. She didn't need it to say yes. She had already said yes, right? So the objective is the whole idea. Again, this is why we're going from value to value, right? So if someone's not feeling it, I can drive the value up by offering more stuff for free. So maybe, and I think I said this to, maybe it was, no, I think this was actually Jaden. So Jaden, I hope you hear this recording. She was like, well, I have an aunt right now that's thinking about, they want to buy stuff for Christmas. And I was like, well, Jaden, here's what you could have said. Right. But she didn't call me at the end of the appointment. She called me after the fact. And I was like, Jaden, here's what you could have said. Well, hey, Aunt Sue, if you want to do that, you totally could. But here's what we could do, because you said you might be also interested in that signature set. Who are you buying for? What do you typically spend? Oh, probably like $100, $200. Okay, cool. Well, here's what we could do. If you get the signatures today, instead of doing the ice cream scoop, veggie peeler, garlic, whatever it is, right? Like all those 5 things. Here's what we could do is I could get you 2 gift sets. So that way you have gifts taken care of for your son and your daughter. That normally would cost you $350. So that way you're getting what you want, but you're also taking care of your gifts for your kids. How does that sound? See, what we're doing is we're taking them from an undesired state to a desired state, because now we're taking care of the problem that they haven't even thought of yet, that we're just addressing ahead of time. So ladies, Autumn and Alexis, you saw in training when I showed you the order for like $6,000, what did I do there? I just helped her like solve a problem that she wasn't even thinking of until I brought it up. Okay, so as they spend more, they can get more. Guys, you could actually, if someone buys a signature set, you could give them a starter set. You could actually give them like the kitchen, you could actually give them like a kitchenette set. So you go, hey, Alexis, if you go ahead and, but I don't start there, because if I start there, I have nowhere to go after that, right? So I'd say, if you get this, I'll give you the 5 things. They're like, no. I'd say, well, okay, I know you mentioned you have a cottage or whatever. Tell you what, if you got the signature set today for your main house, I could actually throw in a starter set, or you could take your old knives and take them to your starter. You can take them to the cabin. And sometimes we're like, yeah, let's do that. You're solving problems, and you guys don't know these things because you've done 3 appointments or 10 appointments. That's why when you talk to me, you start to get these ideas and start to think about this stuff, because I've basically have seen everything. Are you guys liking this? So that was a good value. So what's the difference between a good value and a good deal? So let me again give you a visual. A good deal, right? The money and value are basically the same. So what do we do here? Well, last time we changed the value. This time what we're going to do is change the price. So the value is going to stay the same, but the price is going to be different. We're going to drop the price. We can't do this on everything, but we can do this on certain things. So what does this look like? Looks like this. So let's say someone, you do your best you can, and you say, hey, Aunt Susan, if you got the homemaker, I give you a pair of super shears and the cheese knife and the veggie peeler. How does that sound? And she's still like, Chris, it's just too much money. I say, okay, cool. Well, we do have another special. I wouldn't be able to give you anything for free, but here's what I could do. I could take the price of the homemaker and drop it from $419 or $1419 down to $1235. I'd be able to save you basically $210. Would you be more interested in doing that instead? Ignore these numbers because they're outdated. So what it would look like is this. So on that homemaker, I could drop it from 1419 down to 214. I could save you $205 today. I wouldn't be able to do the free stuff, but would you be more interested in doing the homemaker at 1214 versus 1419 for the free stuff? And what happens? Sometimes customers are a better deal customer. Sometimes people are a better value customer. Does that make sense? There's also a third type of customer that kind of is a better deal, but they get value for what they currently have customer, which is what we used to call a trade in special. And so what we used to do is we used to hold this and say, here's what I can do. I can't give you anything for free, but if you give me a couple of your old knives you don't like and don't use and don't want anymore, I could drop the price $212 or $205. Do you have a couple knives that you don't like, don't want, or are going to throw away after I'm here anyway? They'd be like, you're telling me you're gonna give me $200 if I give you this knife? Be like, yep. I don't care. That's what we're gonna do. How do we do that, by the way? We're doing the exact same thing we just did, right? In terms of like the bonusing points. The only difference is when we do this, the points are coming from internal. They're coming from what we already want versus adding extra stuff. Because what the extra stuff isn't getting the job done. So what we're doing is we're giving table knives to make it happen. So if you see this, here, this is what this would look like, right? I'll show you what this looks like in a graph, but I'll show you what this looks like visually, okay? So what this would look like if I was doing an actual order is I would do this. I'd go to the Cutco Orders app, and essentially what I'm doing is I'm gonna give away table knives for free, right? Because this only works basically on the plus sets, and I don't know why my browser is being so ridiculous lately, but here, this is what this looks like. Okay, so when you come here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go shopping. We're going shopping. Yep. Okay. And you're gonna come down to not this, but you're gonna come back to where it says build B block sets. B block sets. So what this is all the plus sets with table knives without table knives. So this is a basic homemaker, but in a homemaker plus 8 block for this example. So I click this, right? And I get what they want, right? If they're looking at the homemaker plus 8 with black handles and honey finish, I add this to the cart. And now what I add, just like I had right here, right? So 2101. So if you look at this, it says 2101 CB. And I come down here and then I add table knives and table knives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here. I'm going to go table knife. I add that and I add that. And then I come up here. And what I'm going to do is they're going to get charged for 2 table knives. So I'm going to change this to 2. 2 table knives. I say, okay. And this becomes 6, which is how you get a homemaker plus 8. The difference is though, now I bonus these 6 table knives. And now the price for the homemaker plus 8 was $14.19. And what is it now? It's $12.14. My CPO, by the way, before when I was giving stuff away was over $1,000. It's not $1,000 anymore. It's $929. But do you really care if your CPO is $929 instead of $1,040? Probably not, because your CPO is still $929, not 0. You can do this in any of the plus sets. Plus sets mean the signature, the ultimate, the homemaker plus 8, plus 6 galley, plus 5 essentials, and plus 4 studio. What do you think? I see the hamsters starting to go around the wheel. I know you got to go to practice pretty soon, Cassidy. I know you got practice pretty soon, but questions, thoughts. I see it, Alexis, starting to go, oh. See, this is why I wanted you guys to call me, because at the end of appointments, I can help you with these things. But if you're not calling me, I can't teach you these things. And you're just like, they didn't want anything. I'm like, oh, no. You know, use me. Okay. Yes. Autumn.
So if I don't know how to do that, can I like call you and you can like walk me through it?
Guys, think of it like this, right? Like if you're playing basketball, I'm the coach, right? If you're playing basketball, you're out on the court, you're like, Chris, I'm open. Help me make this shot. I go, oh, no, I can't help you make the shot. I have too much integrity for the game. You make me look bad if you score as the coach. No, you make me look good when you score as the coach. Yeah, I'm going to help you. Put the ball in. Yeah, I'm going to say that. Let's go. So absolutely, you can call me. Okay. And if for some reason I don't answer, blow me up. Just keep calling me till I answer. Because I'm probably not doing anything that like so if I like, so one of you guys called me. I think it was Jaden. She actually got me when I was out for a run the other day. I was like, "What's up, Jaden? What's up?" And like, I don't care. I'll take your call. Not a big deal. I can talk through it, right? Call me. If it's 12 p.m. or a.m., you're probably not going to get a hold of me, but that's cool. Call me. Questions with that? Okay. Couple things here. Something you probably don't know. I'm gonna again. I don't want to give you too much because I don't want your brain to start coming out of your ear. So I'm gonna keep it relatively short, but I want you guys to kind of process that a little bit. I also screwed this up the first time I heard that, like the whole bonus point thing. I was like, oh, I can give you stuff, and I totally screwed it up. So what you want to think of it as like this. When you do this the right way, and Autumn, we were talking, I know you and me had this conversation. When you do the job the right way and you follow the manual, the first thing you're going to offer is a homemaker. Now, this is a little bit simple of an example because the way we teach it, if you say yes, you go to signature and ultimate and then whatever, but let's just say they say no. If they say no to a homemaker, I go, great. What I come back, if I'm thinking about this, is if I feel like they're on the fence, I'm going to come back with more value, which might mean I offer super shears and a cheese knife, super shears and a hunting knife, something that might add the value for them to say yes. If they still say no, I say, hey, no worries. I can get you, forget the free stuff because clearly you don't care anyway. I'll get you a lower price. What do you think? Still not feeling it. Cool. I can't do anything else with the homemaker, so I dropped you a galley set, right? I show them the galley set. I say, what do you think? They say, it's still too much. Trade in, still too much. Cool. How about the essentials? Still too much. How about a trade in essentials? Still too much. How about a starter? Still too much. How about a 5-piece? Still too much. How about a 3-piece? Still too much. I keep going. When I give someone 10 or 11 options, do you know how hard it is to not sell something? It's really hard not to sell something because I'm giving them so many options of what they could do. By the way, Alexis, I'm looking at your face specifically when I'm saying this right now. If you ever feel like you're being pushy and you're like, I just don't think they're feeling it, say this. Is Cutco something you could see yourself owning? And if they say no, I'd say, okay, well, thank you for doing an appointment with me. There's one more really important part. Here's where you can really help me out. I get paid every time I show Cutco, but I can only show it to people I've been personally recommended to. Hopefully you thought it was better than you thought it was. And then I go into recommendations. But you're rarely going to have people be like, no, but again, maybe it's that 10% of people that just aren't feeling it. And that's okay. Cassidy, muted.
Sorry, I just have a quick question too.
Yes.
Just since you brought up like recommendations, like one problem that I'm kind of having too is like people are like, oh yeah, like I will talk to people for you or whatever. And I'm like, okay, can I have their information? And they're like, oh, well, like just let me talk to them first and then I'll give you the information.
So sometimes you got to handle the objection of what it actually is that they're objecting to, right? And what they probably are, again, with that scenario, what they might be objecting to is just like, I don't want to write them down right now because I'm worried about judgments. Then you have to like actually break them down and say, hey, just so you know, Ansu, I'd be the only one that talks to them. And like I said, when you give me 5 recommendations, you actually become a sponsor. I won't actually call anybody until you tell me I can. So can you who are you thinking about? Go ahead and give me those right now. And then you actually can, then you know who you're following up with.
Yeah.
But that at least is a place to start. You're handling that objection. Essentially, it's negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? And just really transparently, Cassidy, if you're in person, it's easier to get recommendations because I can physically hand this to you. Then if I'm virtually, I can't physically make you do it. I'm not in front of you.
Yeah.
So it is more challenging to get recommendations. You can get them, you just may even give them more reason. Here's the last thing too. Let's say someone maybe this might be too much, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Let's say somebody buys stuff and you don't maximize your points. Meaning you don't give everything away you could have given away. And you know this person would be like an awesome person to give you recommendations because they know everybody and they're in a great circle. What I might say is I do my approach. I'd say, hey, if you write down 5, you become a sponsor, 10, double sponsor, here you go. And they're just like, I just can't think of anyone, Chris. And I'm like, that's okay, Cassidy. Well, let's do this. How about this? If you can give me 15 names and numbers right now, I'll give you the cheese knife for free. So I tried to have you help me, and you seem not to care about that one. So now I'm going to buy them from you. I will bribe you with names and numbers if you give me a cheese knife or whatever. Cheese knife's big, right? Like that's 60 points. I had to save a lot there to do it. It could be a veggie peeler. It could be something simple. It could be something, I have those points left over. By the way, you can also, again, if you're doing in-person appointments, you could actually technically buy peelers from the office for $6. You can go, I'll give you this veggie peeler for free if you give me 10 people. Yes, Alexis, is your
So do you do the recommendations after you put an order in or before?
I would do it. So I would actually do it from a time efficiency. I might do it at the same time. So I'd say, well, I'm writing up your order. There's actually one more really important part. And then, so you're doing that. Because here's what I like about that is if you're doing something, they're supposed to be doing something as well too. I can slow down my order writing process if they're not like doing what I'm having them do. But if I'm just done staring at them to write me recommendations, you know what they're going to do? They're going to be like, and we're done. Here you go. So I used to be a really slow, like at the end of the appointment, we used to have demos and like have kit knives everywhere. I'd be like the slowest cleaner upper ever. I'd be like, and like, polishing the knife and make it. Cause I'm like, why would I rush out of there if they're helping me build the business? Does that make sense? So there'd be times I'd be there for 25 minutes, like letting them give me recommendations. Does that make sense? So that's why I might like, if I'm typing away at my computer, they're probably not like, where are you in the process? You're like, I'm writing up your order. Just keep writing down. Go. Does that make sense? Okay. Last thing, I'm going to show you guys this because I know you got to go, Cassidy, anyway. And this is something I haven't talked to you about before. Well, actually, two things. First thing, I'll say this one. Tonight, by the way, it's rainy, it's crappy outside. You know what that means? It's a great night to make calls because people are doing less stuff. So I'm going to incentivize you guys a little bit. Okay. Any demo you line up tonight, Alexis, I know you have a demo tonight already. I know you have one. And Cassidy, I know you have one tomorrow and Thursday. They're already in the system. Any demo you get lined up now, I'm going to give you double credit for that for whatever you sell towards your fast start. So you're not going to get double credit for the 2 you have, Cassidy, Alexis. You're not going to get double credit for the 1 you have tonight. But anything you line up tonight, I will give you double credit because I want to incentivize you guys to make calls tonight so you can start lining up your Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and like into the weekend. Because I'm pretty confident on Halloween, you're probably not going to do a lot that week. Yeah, you're like, no, I'm going to go be 19 and 20. Cool, you should do that. Okay, if you want to do appointments, you can totally do that. Right. Second thing, last thing in the PowerPoint here is this. Okay. Okay, we have something called Team Builder. Okay, I think you guys see, yes, Team Builder. Team Builder is where you potentially help build the team. Does that make sense? So Cassidy, I don't know. Well, I know you have an interesting story about how your last school kind of just all of a sudden stopped, right? But there might have been someone that you knew that went to Cardinal Stritch that made you come to Cardinal Stritch because they recommended you to go to Cardinal Stritch, or you just found on your own. Does that make sense? But most likely, by the way, I know at Cardinal Stritch, there's a ton of foreign players of all sports. Somebody started that program where they started talking about that. And then people started coming to Cardinal Stritch because they had a channel of like international players coming to Cardinal Stritch. So we have something similar that if you were to recommend someone to the business that ended up coming to the business, we hook you guys up as a little thank you to say thank you for doing that, because I'm spending money every week, every day, basically advertising the position, whether it's on campus. Alexis, you saw a poster. Somebody put those posters up on campus. Does that make sense? Someone had to print them. Someone had to put them up. Cassidy, I don't remember if you saw it on the web. I think, no, you saw a poster too. You same thing.
I saw a poster.
Saw a poster too. Autumn, I think you saw something on the web or someone told, I don't know, right? But either way, my job is to advertise the position. So if someone's looking for something flexible that they can do virtually, that they at least know that we exist as an option. Some of the best options though are when someone just says, hey, I'm doing this job, I like it, you should check it out. So I have a guy that's going to be in training next week. He's like, hey, can I recommend some friends? I'm like, yeah, if you want to. He's like, cool. I have 3 people. Here you go. I'm like, okay. He's like, do you have an incentive program? I'm like, yeah, I haven't even told you about that yet, but that's pretty cool. So it starts off with like, we have a really, and I left it in my car. I can send you guys pictures if you want to see it, but we have this really badass Corksicle water bottle that's got like our logo, our Boat Burners logo on it. If you recommend somebody and they end up working with us, I give you that regardless how they do. If you end up working with recommending 2 people, we give you a cheese knife. And the prizes keep getting bigger where it's like when you get to like 3 people, they get to be like, we sometimes give you like $150 towards Ray-Bans or whatever you want for sunglasses. And we start to like really hook it up. I've had people win trips to Mexico based on that kind of stuff. I've had some really pretty crazy stuff. So anyway, if you have somebody that you think you might want to recommend to the position in the Vector Impact app, there should be a section called Team Builder. All that's going to do essentially is pull from your phone the contacts that are already in there, and you can just kind of recommend them. Nothing will happen if you click them and recommend them until I do something with it. And I wouldn't do anything until I talk to you more about it anyway, because I would want to know a little bit more about the people before I start reaching out. But the next 2 weeks, I need to make sure I hire at least a handful of people, because I'm going to Mexico on November 9th or 8th, and I won't be back until basically 2 days before Thanksgiving. So I got to get a couple of things in place so I don't get yelled at for being gone for 3 weeks basically. So anyway, if you guys know anybody, again, feel free to do that. I'm more than happy to get you some hooked up that way too. Okay, cool.